one of the most powerful narrations that highlights the difference between self-centered worship, self-centered ibadah, and ibadah that translates into spreading the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that which was brought through the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So he says, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, ذُكِرَ لِرَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ رَجُلَانِ. Two men were mentioned in the presence of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. أَحَدُهُمَا عَابِدٌ وَالْآخَرُ عَالِمٌ. One of them was a worshipper and one of them was a scholar. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فضل العالم على العابد كفضل على أدناكم. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم responded and he said that the virtue of the scholar over the worshipper is like my virtue over the least of you. The virtue of the scholar over the worshipper is like my virtue over the least of you. ثم قال صلى الله عليه وسلم, and the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said, إن الله وملائكته وأهل السماوات والأرض حتى النملة في جحرها وحتى الحوت. That verily Allah, His angels, the inhabitants of the heavens and the earth, even the ant inside his hole, and even the fish in the ocean, لَيُصَلُّونَ عَلَى مُعَلِّمِ النَّاسِ الْخَيْرِ. They send their prayers upon the one that teaches the people good. Again, the Prophet ﷺ highlighted not just the virtue of the scholar over the worshipper, but he went into details ﷺ. And Fudayl ibn Iyad, rahimahullah, who is the scholar that we will come back to at the end of this khutbah, inshallah, he said, commenting on this hadith, عَالِمٌ عَامِلٌ مُعَلِّمٌ. He gave three titles. عَالِمٌ عَامِلٌ مُعَلِّمٌ. That a person who acts upon his knowledge and acts upon his knowledge and teaches the people. So a scholar, someone who has knowledge in the first place, alim. Amil, who acts upon his knowledge. Muallim, who teaches other people his knowledge. قال يدعى كبيرا في ملكوت السماوات. That is a person who is truly called great in the heavens. Now, before you tune out the rest of this khutbah and say, well, none of this has to do with me because I'm not an alim, I'm not a scholar. Pay attention to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is conveying in the Quran. قال سبحانه قل هل يستوي الذين يعلمون والذين لا يعلمون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, say, are those who know and those who don't know equal? And He says also subhanahu wa ta'ala, يرفع الله الذين آمنوا منكم. That verily Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises those who believe amongst you. وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla raises the people of knowledge amongst you by degrees. Is this reference only speaking to two distinctions, or is there a spectrum? And I want you to pay very close attention to what I'm saying here. When you say ibadah, or someone is abid, someone's a worshipper, there's an entire spectrum of what that means. There's a person who's a worshipper in that he prays the 5 prayers, he fasts Ramadan, he does the obligatory things, and he prays his sunan, and maybe he fasts Monday and Thursday. And there's a person who immerses himself further in ibadah, immerses himself further in worship. And in the process of full immersion, starts to maybe pray qiyamul layl, pray the night prayer, and fasts maybe an extra 3 days of the month, or increases even upon that. The spectrum of ibadah is large. The spectrum of what it means to be a worshipper is large. Likewise, when you hear these narrations and you hear these references to people who have knowledge, I don't want you to just think about, oh, this is referring to someone who has this degree and then that degree and then that degree. Like Hadith 1 talks about a bachelor's degree and then a master's degree and then a PhD. Or that this is a distinction that is clearly made just by the virtue of the papers that we pass around and the titles that we pass around in our lives. The point of these types of narrations is to extract not just fadlul alim ala al-abid, the virtue of a scholar over a worshiper, but the virtue of knowledge that is learned and spread over worship that is contained within yourself. And the Islamic methodology to reading these types of texts is that you then color the rest of your life with this. The virtue of learning something yourself versus teaching that to someone else. The virtue of implementing something for yourself versus spreading that good that is around you.